Welcome back, everyone. I am sorry that I have to interrupt the dance party, but we have a lot to do this afternoon still. I'm hoping you all enjoyed the workshops and had a great break. We're now going to get the plenary off and running. I'd like to introduce Lila Tamari, Senior Program Manager at Art Place America. She helped put this convocation together, and she's already spoken once, but here she is to lead us through this great closing plenary. Lila?
Thank you so much, Eric. And hi, everybody. Oh my gosh, it's the final word. I'm so grateful to be here with all of you. And Eric gave me too much credit. I really didn't have a big hand in any of this. I really want to thank all the folks at NASA for all the amazing work they've done to put this together, the partners at Looking Glass Creative, and mostly to all of y'all who are joining, because I think you helped shape all of the content and things. We wanted to hear what was important to you. So I don't want to say too much because I'm just grateful that I get to share the stage now with really brilliant friends, and I want to get right to it. I do have some questions prepped, but the panelists don't know. They haven't seen what they are yet. So we don't have to stick to them. We'll see where we go. And I actually just thought it would be really nice to ground us as humans first. And the way I wanted to do that was to ask y'all to introduce yourself, but by telling a story about the place you call home. And that can be the place you're currently based or somewhere else. It doesn't have to be where you currently are, but let's go, Tamara, Evan, and Carlton. Tell us the story about the place you call home.
Hi, everyone. Okay, and we committed to being succinct, or I did, right? So I'll tell you a little story. I live here in downtown San Jose under the flight path next to the freeway and a couple of blocks away from the fire station, which I no longer hear, having been here for 20-something years. So just a little story about this place that I call home, especially impacted by being at home quite a bit in the last several months. So I went outside to our garden and I picked some of the hierbas that we grow here, and some of the important ceremonial plants that we grow here for our Mexica ceremonies that I wanted to share. I know we don't have smell-o-vision, but I have some sage, I have some rue, I have some cedar here that's important to us, a little leaf of tobacco. And of course, because I'm Mexicana, I'm Chicana, you can see the little chilitos right here. Mind you, if they're this little and this bright, they're hot. So my story that I want to share as I sit here with these sacred hierbas is that I'm so grateful. I'm grateful to Mother Earth, and that even here in this very urban setting in San Jose, right next to the freeway, I'm right next to the freeway and all those great smells and noises, that Mother Earth still gives me an abundance of spiritual, ceremonial, hierbas to cook with, hierbas to pray with. And I just wanted to bring that and share that with everyone.
All right, I think it's me now. I can't follow that up. That's beautiful, but I will say, I'm going to switch up. My initial answer was going to have to do with what has sort of affected me where I'm from here in Denver, with specifically the Chicano movement and artists on the west side and north side of Denver. But I'm not going to mention that now because I think this is more where I'm from right now is my house, like all of you. And I have a 4-year-old and I have a almost 9-month-old, but I'll share this story, which I find funny. I just finished teaching a class, and one of over the course of the course, there's a bunch of different subjects. One of them was forgiveness, and we were having dinner, and I was talking about forgiveness, and so my wife was saying, what are you covering? And I said, who is forgiveness for? Can you forgive too early? Can you forgive too late? And in the same pattern that I was just speaking, my son goes, can you forgive yourself? And I thought, oh, I knew it. I knew that my son was going to be a genius. He's a genius. Look at that. He's bringing up a big thing. And he follows it up with, can you forgive your we? He calls it his we. And then I was like, okay, yeah, so he's 4 years old. So anyways, I'm locating, that's where I'm from right now, is home with a really creative, inspirational, thought-provoking 4-year-old and a baby.
I guess it's my turn. My name is Carlton Turner. I am down here in Utica, Mississippi, land of the Choctaw, the Chickasaw, the Natchez, and the Yazoo people. And this place where I am from, my family's been on these lands for 8 generations. And what that means is in a small rural community like Utica, that the relationships are generational and concentric circles. So in many ways, my children are going to school with children that I went to school with their parents. And those parents and our parents went to school together, and so on and so forth back many generations. And I guess the story I will share is I remember as a child growing up in this area, and only not having access to cable or television, and the only television we had was basically the 4 major networks: NBC, CBS, ABC, and PBS. That was before Fox even came along. And so there wasn't a lot of television, but we used to make believe and play a lot of imaginary settings in our backyard. So we would play around and pretend that we were this or pretend that we were that. And we were always making use of the natural surrounding and turning it into our play set, these magical, fantastical lands. And now I guess I use that same kind of like visioning strategy to imagine what my community could look like if we change our practices and the way that we approach community development. So that's my story, and I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you all so much. That is so, this is why it's good to just keep it funky and surprising. And I'm really grateful because each of you talked about the gifts that land brings us, the place we're rooted in, and also family, and our connections to that. And I want to thank you for grounding us there, because the story about land is the story about us too, and there are forces, capitalism, that are trying to disconnect us from that every day, all the time. But we're all fighting against that, and each of you are in really big ways. So I'm grateful. Shifting gears just a little bit, this last plenary, and thank you, Tamara, for putting where you're currently based and acknowledging our ancestors who and the original lands that we're on. Thank you for that. This last plenary is about change and the future that we want to see and how we're going to get there. Just something tiny, just a little small. And I think you would all agree that with change comes trouble. And I really want to invoke John Lewis and bring his spirit into the room. And tell us about the last time you kind of caused some good trouble. I'm curious. And I want to start actually with you, Evan, because you smiled. So I feel like something must have come to your mind immediately. But the last time you caused some good trouble, you can talk about your family if you want, but I was hoping you could ground it too in something based in your work or cultural practice.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think a couple things come to mind. And I guess I'll just bring this up as I don't know how this is trouble in a way, and it might apply to some of the people on the call. There are a bunch of. Let me start with this. I think that that Denver's greatest contribution to American art it comes often in the form of of the guys in the lowrider communities and in car culture and cruising. And it's been something that's been going on here for decades. And that is kind of never considered art by maybe the establishment. And so have been involved with a bunch of people who are very intimately tied there. And we pushed for the city council to recognize this. And this was in response to the part of town where folks traditionally cruise. For those that aren't familiar, it's basically a parade showcasing your art, showcasing your culture. And it's the most American thing that you can imagine. These are cars from the 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s, American, Ford and Chevy. And in Denver, it's largely Chicano, but not totally. And so it's adaptation, and then you parade it. And anyways, in the neighborhoods there that are gentrifying, like a lot of cities, there'd been pushback and complaints from newer residents, and it was making the news. And so a group of folks, we pushed city council to recognize this culture for what it was and to celebrate it. And they actually responded and proclaimed it a Cruise Down Feds Day, Barnum Park to La Raza Park, Cruise Down Feds Day. And that was a big thing for the people involved, because it was a recognition that this is a community that had been policed, had been ostracized, had been targeted for a long, long time. And then so anyways, I think that was a type of trouble that I was minorly involved in.
Do you want to call on us, or do you want us to just
Go.
act like
No. Y'all can, yeah.
All right. Well,
What
since I
your move?
unmuted myself, I'll go next. I've been working in philanthropy for the last 2 years and change. Prior to that, doing community organizing, leading arts organizations. So you can imagine it's been different. So the last time I caused some trouble, I would say so if those of us who are working in philanthropy, we have to cause trouble. You have got to cause trouble. It's a huge privilege to not have to worry about meeting payroll every 2 weeks. And that lives with me because that's what I did for a very long time. So I would say that, taking that to heart and moving in November 2019, I pushed my board. This is a very small family foundation, brought the conversation of race and equity to the board retreat. And I did a little bit of prep work, but not too much, because I kind of didn't want to hear it about a no. And, those of you who are on this call, Tom Borup, who know me very well, know that I do like to bring humor into the conversation, but I'm also very disciplined about my business. And my business is about race and equity and having those conversations. And it was very unpleasant. That board retreat that we had. It was very unpleasant. And one of the co-founders of the organization was quite upset. And that was not pleasant at all. So, it wasn't like, there was stomping out of the room, but almost. And it was very unpleasant to be in that room where there were only 2 of us of 11 that were people of color. And I really doubted myself. I doubted myself halfway through that retreat. I thought this was a bad idea, really bad. And I could feel like the hives on my hands starting to bubble up. So what does this mean, right? Because we're on the call and we're trying to inspire, is that what I want to say is that we owe it, right? Owe it to the ancestors. We have to do these things. It's really uncomfortable. Believe me, it's hard. So when I say we have to do it, it's because I'm doing it. And that because this organization that I work for is moving forward. And even though it is painful and people have been upset and I have been afraid, it is moving forward. It's going to move forward. And I don't want to take up all the time on that. But what I'm saying is I just wanted to give a real live story, because one thing is to be on a Zoom, one thing is to write an op-ed, but one thing is to be across the boardroom table from an individual that's feeling attacked, and you're feeling like you might be attacked next. And it's real. So I just that's the last time, well, that's one of the last times that caused some trouble.
So yeah, so I'll just be brief and share two things. One, the first I'll be super brief and just put it in the chat because people can read about it. But was part of a group that helped to develop the Cultural New Deal, which was just kind of calling out, naming what it is that we need in this work as artists and culture bearers. And people who end up being the first responders as our communities are in crisis. And so the Cultural New Deal that came out back in August was a piece of work that helped to foster ever since the pandemic jumped off. So that's one. I consider that light trouble because I feel like that's just the baseline of what we should have already been doing. So it's not really anything super innovative or cutting edge. But the other piece, and I can't take any credit for this piece, other than being on the board of this magnificent organization, Project South, for the elimination of poverty and genocide, that back in September worked with Nurse Dawn Wooten as the whistleblower who exposed the atrocities in the Irwin Detention Center down in Georgia of immigrant women being forcibly having forced hysterectomies. And that work became national news and has made some ripples. And in the South, when you're working against the prison industrial complex or any of those systems, it's dangerous work. And so I applaud the organizers and those that are on the front lines, making their voices heard and trying to keep people like Nurse Dawn Wooten safe in these times.
Thank you all for sharing. All incredible. And the thing that I'm wrestling with or like really hearing is that it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable, and especially when we want to recognize and do acknowledgement, all of a sudden, like everybody's hurt, and it takes a lot to tend to that. A lot of care and humility. So just really all of those very different, but in some ways similar examples are really useful, I think, for all of us. So thank you. Y'all are bad. Cue the next Michael Jackson song. I want us to get tactical for a moment because the changes are happening around us all the time. Change, we've seen that obviously this year, knowing the year it's been, and folks have been causing trouble for a long time. And, this is as good as any other time to blow things up. So, I mean, from where you sit, what's one of the most major opportunities you see in this moment? And don't hold back. Like, I really want to know your dream here. I actually want to start with you, Carlton. Given your perspective also in the rural South, there's so much that you are constantly, I feel like you're constantly just like giving no F, and constantly feeling like there's an opportunity to be had, to be seized. So, but right now, what's feeling like you need to jump on it?
Yeah. So first, I feel like the work that we're doing in SIP Culture is about food and stories, about narrative and about food justice. Who gets to tell stories, where those stories are told, how they're told is really important in how public policy is shaped. So we feel like that is just important as a baseline for people to have both the skills and the backing to tell their own story, to advocate on their own behalf. And the food side of it is super important because our community has been decimated. Our food infrastructure over the last 30 years has basically been eliminated. And whereas, people used to produce the majority of their food, we went to having a grocery store, having several, grocery stores in the community, to now only having a Dollar General that people have access to, and the nearest grocery store is 20 miles away. So I see there an opportunity to disrupt the current cycle of how our community accesses and produces food. And that may seem like a minor thing, but if you can't eat, then you can't even think about the other issues that are bearing down on you. So those are two of like the immediate pieces. But I think the most important one, I think where we are as a country, as a nation, is directly tied to what some would say is a failing educational institution, what others will say is a very carefully executed public education system. But either way you want to look at it, the result is that we have a society that is writ large not intelligent and not sophisticated when it comes to understanding community, how power happens, how political power happens. And I see the education system with COVID, there's an opportunity for a large disruption to happen there because students are now being educated mostly from home. And so that creates an opening to create different types of community-based systems that allow for a different type of education of our communities. And I think that ultimately, where the food is working on an immediate need and addressing an immediate moment, the education work is about the future. And if we don't do that work now, then we're losing time in the future. So those are the pieces. This is also like, people who are defying science and saying the scientists don't know what they're talking about. That's because you're dumb. You know what I'm saying? You don't, for you to even think like that is because you're not educated and you don't understand that in mathematical equations or chemistry and how physics works, and you're denying all of that because you're being led by some emotional framework that doesn't actually make any type of logical sense. And I connect that back to critical thinking, back to, having an education of by people who care about you and care about your future and ultimately want to see you excel. So they actually want you to learn. So anyway, I'm gonna get off that.
No, don't get off that though, because I think there's something, don't get off that because I think there's something there. And I'd like you to just speak a little bit more about specifically this connection to education and how, because this is a space that I think state arts agencies do support in a major way. And when you're talking about this is a big opportunity in this current moment of COVID where things are being blown up. So what is that? What does that look like? That, a vision for how that needs to be localized. You're speaking from a rural perspective. I think it's super useful to just dream out loud here.
Yeah, so I think state art agencies have always had an opportunity to impact the quality of education that's happening because ultimately you're working with artists and creatives who are by definition kind of undermining the status quo of how teaching happens. To bring a different type of strategy to young people, to the schools. I've worked as a teaching artist with the Mississippi State Arts Commission, and I know when we had an opportunity to go into classrooms and say things that their teachers could not say, and teach them and expose them to ideas that were not part of their curriculum, it has had a profound impact on those young people that we were able to touch. I think the moment now is very similar in which teachers are being asked to redesign the way that they teach based on this distance. And the way that they were teaching in the classroom when they had access to the young people like face-to-face wasn't working either. And so now they're being asked to do these mental gymnastics to create a new way of engaging the same material, the same young people, but with this whole play of distance. And so I think it's an opportunity to organize with teachers to bring more creativity and strategies around how to undermine, the way that teaching has really dulled the sensibilities of our young people. There's an opportunity here to strategize and organize teachers, to strategize and organize people that are working on educational boards at the local level, to try something new, because now is the moment to interject that into a system. And if those things can take hold, then you can begin to change and shift the way that other school systems around you see, they're having some actual results over here because they've actually shaken up some things quite a bit. And I think it's just time to be bold. Like someone said the other day on a call, we don't have time for this partisan thinking. It's the only space we have left really now is for revolutionary type of change in our systems, because we see going down this pathway what it takes and how long it will impact our world, because people are just kind of struggling and lost.
Okay, so education check, food sovereignty check. I'm curious, Evan or Tamara, what else is really feeling like a big opportunity right now from where you sit?
I might jump in because I feel like it connects a lot to what Carlton was just saying, and he has a lot of wisdom to share. I'm excited to connect with you, Carlton, more after this. From the work, so I work with an organization called Warm Cookies of the Revolution, and we conceptualize it as a civic health club. You exercise your civic health. And the way that Carlton was just describing it to me in this education, that seems to me that's how we conceptualize it as civic education. How to learn what it means to, as a resident, to exercise owning your community. What does it mean to own your community? So we talk a lot about voting every day. And where I am in Denver, in 2016, there's one tiny little precinct out of all there's, I don't know, 100 some precincts, I think, in Denver, one precinct that was majority voted for Trump, right? So this is a city that is Democratic run and supported. And we have to deal with incredible issues of inequity, incredible issues of racial wealth gap, the litany of issues that we have. And so I think that what we're dealing with when we talk about voting every day is that, though what's coming up is a big election nationally, and it will have profound effects, but the truth is locally, we've been dealing with things for a long time, and we're going to continue to deal with them regardless of sort of your party. And so if you're talking about what's an opportunity, the way that we see it, and this is just our lens, everyone has their lens, is we would like to see a civic health club in every community, a place where people can go to learn about, who gets what, when they get it, how they get it, where is power, how do you push for what you want? You own your community the same way you own your purse, the same way you own your bicycle. You own the jail, you own the schools, you own the street, you own the water. But the trick to this, and this is the trick in terms of why it's arts-based, why it's culture-based, is people are busy and they have such limited time and money. And there is a barrage of culture that is saying, this is what you should do with your limited time and money. And that includes watching Netflix, that includes shopping, that includes watching football, whatever the thing is, going to church, spending time with your family. Those are the things that people do. And the trick is, how do we, instead of pushing people away and say, and wagging our hands and saying, what you should be doing is this is crucially important, because people who are smacked up in their face, they already know, and they're doing it. And then there's a bunch of people who have the privilege to show up at a meeting at 2 p.m. in a fancy building, and it's in the language that they speak, and they can pay for childcare. So if we can take care of some of those things, but we can also make it fun, we can make it joyous, we can do the things that people want to do. And that's what we try to do. You're into sports? Let's do sports. But we could talk just with the NBA bubble. You could cover so many social justice issues. And so that's the challenge, I think, of artists, and cultural workers, is connecting with people to imbue what we're doing with this spirit, so that you allow people ways to get in and get in touch. So that's what's available. That's what I see as a civic health club, or whatever you want to call it. But this education that Carlton's talking about, of what it means to be, I use resident, but a citizen. And I'm not talking about papers.
Yeah. May I jump in? Yeah, okay. So this the opportunity, the challenge right now, I'm thinking I'll just maybe share a little story and then at another place kind of bring it more to the present. In one of my old shops at the School of Arts and Culture at the Mexican Heritage Plaza in our East Side San Jose, we had this really great, and I'm thinking about you all on the call, right? State arts agencies. For transparency's sake, I'm the chair of the Western State Arts Federation. So I like to feel like I'm here amongst friends and colleagues. So just, shout out to the Western states right there. So going back to the School of Arts and Culture, Mexican Heritage Plaza, big redevelopment agency project east side of San Jose, all my elders here in this community that worked really hard, expending their political and social capital to get that built. Right. Okay. So fast forward, and this East Side San Jose neighborhood, gentrification, the whole nine. We're in the Bay Area, and we saw include the arts organization that I led then, and is still there and thriving, and doing good work. School of Arts and Culture doing COVID testing and food distribution. These are artists that are out there front lines handling business. So I just want to give them another shout out too. But one of the great in this right here, I'm channeling both who's in the room right now and then who I was and what I was doing at that moment. But we had this great opportunity where we created our corridor was the Alum Rock corridor, right? It's like kind of like one of the main streets by us. And we created this thing called Aruva. It was the Alum Rock Urban Village Advocates. And I was so happy that day that a city bureaucrat called and said, I can't find anything on this Aruva. I don't have any paperwork for it. Where is this? Like, where did this come from? So I just had to laugh because this is part of the opportunity, right? We created it. We drummed it up. We thought it up. We had food and we ate and we thought about it and we created our own urban village advocates and we drew the lines around the map and we said the developers have to come to us. And we told them, when you come here, you've got to come to us. And then they got the word. So, and this is where you all come in, right? Like, I love my bureaucrats because my people, my bureaucrats didn't stop us. They didn't say, oh, wait a minute, you can't have that. It might have been because we were determined, but also they had the ability, those folks, those good people that I was working with and are still there at City Hall said, okay, all right, you guys drew your own lines and you have your own rules. And yeah, and we have our own set of agreements of how we conduct ourselves. And I really appreciate that from my colleagues there inside of agencies, municipalities, government entities that had the thought to say, okay, we're in this together. How can we support you? So those are those types of opportunities. They don't always work out that way, right? It's not always, rainbows and unicorns because we're talking about land, and land is in high demand here in the Bay Area, and it's very expensive. And having a group of community people, artists, neighbors, moms saying, hold up, your definition of community benefit that developers are coming with and that the city comes with is not our definition. It's not big enough. It's not broad enough. It's not deep enough. It's not working for us. So anyways, I have a lot of stories. I'll just stop right there.
I love it because you're bringing us to the crux. I think y'all touched on it, but you just said it explicitly. Tamra, land. And, whether we're talking about food sovereignty, education, civics, and voting every day, we started with land for a reason, and that is so central to this work. I'm just really curious what you guys think, what y'all think, the role land plays in the future and what you would say one of the biggest opportunities government has here. Do we just preparations? I mean, y'all, whatever y'all think, but I'm curious. Carlton, you're muted.
You hear me now? Yep.
Yep.
So this is a question came up. I was on one of the 27,000 Zoom plenaries that I'm doing in the month of October the other day, and this conversation came up about we were talking about land and story and food, and someone asked the question, well, what about What about the fact that we're all on stolen land? How does that impact the way that we think about our strategies and our organizing? And I said, well, there's so much talk right now about Black Lives Matter and the movement for Black lives, and when I think about Black liberation, I can't think about Black liberation without thinking about Indigenous sovereignty and what that means, because I think the liberation of Black people in this country is deeply tied up in fighting for Indigenous people's right to their sovereignty, because ultimately this is Native American land, and so many people start off their conferences and their gatherings with these land acknowledgements, and it ends there. It's like, oh, we want to acknowledge that we're on this land, or we want to, have this chief come in and say a prayer. But the only way we're actually going to get to where we need to go is to not just acknowledge that they're here, but actually follow their leadership. Because the challenges that we face on this land, especially as we talk about issues of climate change, issues of land stewardship, the fires in California, the droughts across the country, all of those challenges have already been solved. There's no innovation that's left that's needed to solve those challenges. It's about who's leading and whose solutions are being implemented. And right now, the Indigenous people who know how to steward the land, their solutions aren't the ones being implemented. And so we're facing the double challenges of having the society, the land collapsing because it's not being properly taken care of, and the people who know how to do that being denied the space to lead in the area that they have expertise. And so those are some of the things that I think when we talk about land, there's great opportunity to move past the land acknowledgement into recognizing Indigenous leadership, which I think is one of the parts of the Cultural New Deal that we talked about that is extremely important if we are to shift the tides of our country for the future.
And you know what, Carlton, this makes me think about that political and social capital that we each have, and I don't want to hear about, oh, I don't know a lot of people, or I don't know these people, or no, it's interesting to me how, here in San Jose, right? The mayor texted me one Sunday morning and said, I want to talk to you about Indigenous Peoples Day. And I said, all right, call me. So, right, and I know I get it. Like some of us live in bigger cities or smaller cities or whatever. I'm not trying to be all like, oh, look, the mayor's calling me. But he was my council member, right? So, yeah. So anyway, so he's like, okay, Indigenous Peoples Day, blah, blah, blah. And I said, you know what, Sam? I said, thank you for calling me. I appreciate it. But this is not my land. So I know who you can talk to and who you can speak to, and I can set that up. And he said, great, would you be in those calls? And I said, no. I said, you're going to speak to tribal leaders. I'm not a tribal leader, and you're the mayor of the city, so you need to give them that respect. And he said, okay, all right. So there are opportunities. I'm making this very simple here, right? But there are these opportunities each one of you have to and I shouldn't have waited actually for the mayor to call me. I should have called him up and been like, hey, I've been hearing this stuff about Indigenous Peoples Day. Do you want a consultation? And we can do this, right? From, if you don't know who your elected official is, I know in this call, all of us know who our elected officials are, but really thinking about that Indigenous sovereignty is that it's incumbent upon all of us to understand what is our role and then to get out of the way, right? If there's an opportunity to get in there and say, if you know who to speak to, signal that and then move, right? And that's that dance that I think, we have to, because, I'm a dancer, so I'm always thinking about dance analogies, and whether they're good or not is another thing, but really important to know when to remove yourself from that conversation. And I see that as an opportunity as well. Another opportunity that I'll just put right here, and then you can tell me when, or if it's relevant, around it's the inside outside game, right? We have our jobs, and then we have our jobs in the community. If anybody wants to talk to me about my recent experience as a green campaign manager for a woman of color for elected office, I also think that's another opportunity that's happening, has always been present, but is really alive for a lot of folks, is that I get that some of us don't want nothing to do with the political system. If you've met my husband, oh my gosh, he's out there. And supporting women of color in elected office is incredibly important. And even if you're an introvert, you can do a lot of different things. And this is an opportunity right now that is important because we, as women of color, we center family and community first. I'm not saying that others can't, but I'm just going to say that's something that's incredibly important. I'm not bringing something new to the table. This is something that's been written about. Great article on NPQ from Ayanna Presley's campaign manager who wrote about this or was written about her perspective. Anyways, I think I threw in a couple of rants in there. I see, paso la guitarra. I see the mic.
You're good. You're good. Evan, is there anything you want to add on that, specifically around land and kind of what we need, what role government has specifically in that?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot I think about this. I'm a non-Zionist Jew, and so I have very strong feelings and opinions on land-based nationalism. And anyways, we'll put that aside for a moment. In Denver, so we're actually doing a thing next weekend at a cemetery called Riverside. And this cemetery is where people who literally built this city live eternally. And by built, I mean literally like constructed the city. And it's a dead place. They lost their water rights because they said it was a handshake deal a long, long time ago. So you go there and it's yellow. The grass isn't there. The trees have died. So it's a dead place with these souls. And it happens to be right next to the most, I mean, it's a fully gentrified sort of neighborhood in many ways, but there's still parts of it that are yet to be completely gentrified. And the people that are buried there, I mean, there's some very interesting folks that bring up questions of abolition. There's a Confederate monument there out here in Colorado, which is interesting, but there's also a lot of Union soldiers, including one named Silas Soule. If anyone doesn't know him, he's a very inspiring person. So a person who, Ghost Marcel, was basically brought Black professional baseball to Colorado. There's interesting people there. But it's in this place where basically we have already displaced, and this is just currently, we've displaced people over time, but we've displaced so many people outside of this city that the question of what the government owes the people, the other municipalities, because people have, by and large, working class people in this city, and particularly Black and brown folks, have been pushed to outside of the city. And what do we owe those municipalities that don't have the services, that don't have what people have built for decades inside the city? I know people who now have to take 3 buses to get downtown to the only place they can go for their health services. It's an hours long trip. So I think that is a form of reparations that we need to look at. But as governments, we need to answer these questions a little bit of how do you expand the tax base? Can you expand the tax base? No politician's going to run on that. I want to take our money and give it to other municipalities for what we owe them. But it's up to those of us who are pushing culture and know that the root cause change is what we need to do first. And the policy is going to be the last thing that changes. We need to bring those things up. And I have one other thing, but I have a feeling we're out of time. So I'll cede.
No, say it. Say it.
This is just, you made me think of this, of how the dynamics of power work. There's a suburb just south, it's its own city of Denver, and they recently rectified it a little bit, but there's another one that did this. They have made such stringent laws or regulations for where a registered sex offender, where they can live, how close to a school and a community center and a pool, that it effectively, it made it so there was only like 1.7% of this entire city that they could live. They would need to find a place to live there. It outlawed these folks from living there. And all of the science and data, this reminds me of what Carlton was saying before, everything says that's not the way you go about doing it. This makes these people more isolated. Plus, most of the folks who are on this list, they're on a variety of reasons. They're not all scary monsters, though some are. And so what it makes me think of is what can the government, this is land, this is about zoning. So there are these very boring, intricate, nerdy things that are done that are very, that aren't sexy. They're not, you can't look at them and just say, oh, this evil person is doing this evil thing. It's part of the machinery of it that in how we zone. And so that's even more reason why we need to bring to light these nerdy things. We need people who can cut straight to it, whether it be through art or through gathering people or through education, to say these are things that we have to address, and they're not easy, and people are going to have very strong opinions about them. But the way that it's going right now, the status quo is these decisions are being made without your consent, and so you need to participate in them.
Thank you. That's not an easy thing, but thank you for sharing that example. I think in all the things you all said, I guess where I'm curious of kind of shifting the conversation or that's related, is kind of what we need to get there, because, you know, I think all of us, just based on why we're here, right, we understand that creativity and that arts and culture allows us to come up with ways we can't even imagine right now that we need. And so I'm just going to invite us to be in that space for a minute and ask you all, like, to put on your super, you know, power cape, your super woman, your super person cape, and just kind of like, what is the one superpower you're going to need? You know, I will just start and say, it's really in some ways just a like reaction to what you said, Evan. I think the one superpower I would have is like ultra healing beam or something, like, you know, like ultra, that's not the best word for it, but like something that, like, you know, could, I don't know that it's just about empathy, but it's really about like healing deep wounds within us, you know, and how that then gets shared. I think that would be mine, but I'm curious kind of what y'all's would be for how we're going to get there.
I think for my super, now I think you know, that for, if I could have the ideal superpower, am I reading the question right? The ideal superpower would be for, I mean, for myself and for others, would be to be able to beam active decolonization powers, and also to the white supremacy culture, you know, just removing, being able to identify it, see it like laser crisp, because it's so hard, it's all over, it's what we're swimming in. And there's a really great article that I shared with our team, that it's not new, you know, to I'm sure to most of you, around white supremacy culture and antidotes, right, with Tema Okun. And I know it has another author, and I've been using that with different groups that I'm involved with, to really help us move back, especially in my own community and in some of the professional circles that I'm in, so that we can move away from this idea that white supremacy culture, I only hear, oh, okay, so that means you're calling me a racist. So that superpower of being able to have that moment of here's some definitions and here's some antidotes, and really taking the time to stop and individually think, what am I doing? Am I participating in this? And how can I stop, and how can I call that out for myself and model it? And then with the decolonization piece, you know, I'm heavily influenced, you know, as a parent. In our culture, we have our children are supposed to respond to parents and elders with mande, and mande means order, like order me, right? And so in our household, we've been talking a lot about decolonizing ourselves from that, because I have actively tried to think about that piece where in our own culture and our own colonization and the conquest, where our indigenous people were made to and were enslaved and were told you could not respond but to say mande, and you couldn't respond in your indigenous language either. So now we're trying to, in our own home and in our circles, to say we're going to stop saying mande, which culturally is really hard for Mexicans. So, you know, this is like a personal thing around anyways, you know, superpowers. All right, did I answer the question?
You got that. No, you did. White supremacy crystal laser separator thing. Like, that's beautiful. I love that. Like, I visualized it. For real. Carlton, Evan, you got the crystals.
Yeah, got the crystal. Well, I think for me, the superpower is one I feel like I want to start with, go back just a little bit and say that I think, first of all, the superpower is the ability to see things that don't exist. That is the superpower. And actually, it's not a superpower because we actually are born with it. And the education system actually rips it from our grasp through indoctrination, through this idea of the way that we're taught. So artists turn out to not be anything special. We're just people who have grown up and been able to hold on to a piece of this ability to access the creative center that exists in everybody. And so for me, the superpower would be, I guess, making sure that everybody can always constantly tap back into their creativity center to be able to understand and unpack and see things that don't exist, and then understand also how to manifest those things in a material form.
Carlton stole mine. I was gonna say honestly the same thing, that many people grow up with this poisonous idea that they're not artists or not creative. I know for me, when I was little, I couldn't draw very well. And so the kid who could draw in class was the artist. But then it took being an adult and being a professional artist for like a decade until I was like, oh yeah, I guess I'm an artist. But I think that, I mean, it's the same thing, that if people could recognize that we have the creative ability to work around, through, over, inside out challenges, and that then we have the ability to resist obedience to laws that don't work, to systems that don't work, that we can do those things with creativity, with joy, with humor, with a strong backbone, and with each other. So yeah, I'd throw that cloak onto everyone. That's my superpower.
And to stop saying
Y'all
Monday,
are brilliant.
right? You know,
Stop saying Monday.
No Monday, we're not having it. Also, just quickly on those two links, thank you for dropping them in there. I know they have really long sort of like, you know, they may seem difficult to use, but briefly, what I've used is like the anti-bias continuum. It's a self-assessment, like just put yourself on the continuum and then put the institution or department that you're a part of. And if you're willing to do this in your group, like your staff, your team, your board, or whatever entity you're in, I have found it to be really useful to then come back and share, like, I'm on this part of the continuum and I think our institution is on this part, and then comparing notes, right? And then with the dismantling racism in a group, I've usually had the group each take the white supremacy culture, like the negative and the antidote, in separate groups, depending on how many groups you have. And then having that discussion, then come back. So, I mean, it's basic facilitation stuff, but I just want you to know that these are things that I've used, and they've been wonderful to use, wonderful tools that really have helped me and helped others to understand what is it that we're talking about.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm so mad because I had more questions in a game. It's time. This went so quickly. I know, boo. After party after. But I really just have to say thank you so much. Y'all are brilliant. I have so much love for each of you, and I have to pass it back to Eric at this point. But just thank you. This was really inspiring.
Thank you, Lila. And yes, thank you, Tamara, Carlton, Evan. That was such a deep conversation that I think we barely got to scratch the surface on any of those. But you know, now to bring things to a close, unfortunately, this convocation must end at some point, but not quite yet, because we have Mike Bond, who's a brilliant jazz pianist and composer, and he's taken the themes from the convocation up to this point, put them into original composition. He's going to tell you a little bit about it, but then he and his band are actually going to perform that. Mike, up to you.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike Bond, and I am from the native land of the Lenni Lenape people in New Brunswick, New Jersey. I want to express deep appreciation to NASA for allowing me this special opportunity to close out the convocation with a commissioned musical piece that I composed and get to share with you all today. This piece was written to reflect key themes and takeaways from these past 2 weeks. I wrote this piece with trumpet because the trumpet is a versatile instrument. Its sound can be a symbol of triumph while also the somber sound of loss and lament. And right now, it truly is unique in this way. This time is both of lament, sorrow, and hope. I also chose to include vocal percussion beatbox, and the beatbox symbolizes the chatter of the world and the pressures that come with following social normative ideas of being performative and validated and successful. The piece itself is separated into 3 movements. The first movement features a blues influenced melody about the individual voice that you will hear in the trumpet. It is out of time and written with a lot of space in mind. In the first plenary, we were reminded of George Floyd's murder in Minneapolis and what it would take for us to reconcile with communities of color in order for there to be the trust needed to create artistic spaces. And this movement is about lament, realizing and identifying with others' hurt and pain. The trumpet melody is both a lament and a cry of anger. The second movement happens when the beat kicks in with a beatboxer. This movement is about making connections. The music is more improvisational here, busier in the instruments. There's an initial melody that is framed in the rhythm of several human questions that we may have in making connections. So here you'll hear something like that. And the rhythm of that is, what are we gonna do? How do we move ahead? What if they disagree? How do we keep the faith? So I kind of took that rhythm, that similar rhythm, and made that into the melody there. It features the trumpet as a solo improvisational instrument, which is often what one must do in building real connections, improvise. It refers to the struggle of breaking barriers, connecting with communities, and sacrificing comforts in order to pursue deeper relationships between groups of people, whether or not we are talking about artists versus grant makers or communities that share different ethnicities and definitions for what they call their home. The third movement is about hope and optimism moving forward. It is where the title of the song came from. The melody here is Home of the Brave backwards. So when you think of the national anthem, I basically put the home of the brave and just made it backwards. Brave of the home, which is the title of the piece, is the brave of the home. When we think of our Star Spangled Banner, the lyrics represent a country that's patriotism is rooted in its triumphs and is a nod and a wink to the bloodied history of colonization. Our anthem focuses on the country or home or place rather than the people that have built this home into what it is today. And it is brave individuals who are willing to share their stories as people of color or their story as a gender neutral or transgender person or an undocumented immigrant that despite encountering day-to-day systemic oppression here have continued to fight to make this country a home for them. It is the power of these individual stories that break barriers and transform our cultural understanding of one another. This is our inspiration for moving forward. The more that we can hold space for others, the more we can readily access community-driven empathy within ourselves. This is why I added the quote from the well-known hymn, lift every voice and sing, although there is much work to be done. That quote is, let us march on till victory is won, which you'll hear at the end. So as we end this convocation, it's my hope that we can continue to work to create a thriving environment for communities to express their cultural identities through theater, art, music, dance, etc., by identifying with one another as being on a joint mission for equity, transformation, and lasting change. Thanks, and I hope you enjoy.
Wow. That was amazing. Thank you so much, Mike. And please thank Alonzo and Jean. And on a personal note, as a former trumpet player, let me just say it's always the right move to include a trumpet. Never a downside to that. We'll be putting up the links to all those great musicians in the chat in just a moment. I highly recommend checking them out. And definitely can recommend Mike's The Honorable Ones album that he dropped a little bit earlier this year. It was an amazing listen. I have it on my playlist, Mike. So definitely pick that up and enjoy it. And finally, I just want to thank everyone. Thank you to the workshop leaders, the plenary speakers, the facilitators. You guys made this thing run. Art Place, thank you so much for funding the convocation, and Lila partnering with us throughout the planning process. Your insight, everything made the difference. It helped keep us going the right way. Tom Borup, Harry Waters Jr., you guys are always a pleasure to work with. And really, you made this into a special conference with all your hard work, getting things lined up and finding us the right people to pull this off. And a special thanks to Thomas and the crew at Looking Glass Creative. They kept us moving forward, made sure everything ran smoothly. let me be just the MC for this one, which I highly appreciate. So thank you all for that. And last but not least, I want you to take a moment and look around at all of your peers here today. You are the ones doing the work, the ones who will take what you've learned and implement it. You're the ones that are going to continue to push the field forward. So I want to thank you for that. And I'd like you to just take a moment here at the very end and unmute yourselves and give yourselves a round of applause for the work you're doing now, the work you've done in the past, and the work you're doing in the future. So let's end on a wave of applause just for everything you guys are doing out there. Please join me. Don't make me the only one who's clapping here. Thank you all so much for a great convocation. I'm looking forward to working with you all again in the future. Now, have a good night.